Hey everyone, welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy, I'm the host of the show, and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. How are you all doing? I'm very excited. As of tomorrow, I am inoculated against this last hell year. And I gotta tell you, just the excitement. We had some cat food delivered today. And I know it's a risk. I know it's not the full 2 weeks. But I brought the cat food inside without cleaning it with a disinfecting wipe. I know, risky. I'm taking risks. It's only been almost 2 weeks. And I took some cat food in. Even though also half a year ago, scientists said you don't have to clean your groceries. I still did it. That's how seriously I took this last year. That's how seriously this last year has fucked up my mental health. Because I thought if I brought an avocado in without dipping it in a vat of bleach, that Naomi and I, and maybe even the cats and Mabel, would be on a respirator within 2 hours. Oh, but yes. So, we're really taking full advantage of being vaxxed up. Not cleaning cat food. Not spraying the mail with rubbing alcohol. Woo! Yeah, things are getting crazy over here in the Beckerman-Ekparagon household. But one of the things that's keeping me sane? Why, it's this show. Specifically, I'll say this, today's episode with Matt Sweeney. This is a wonderful talk. And if you don't know who Matt is, why don't I read you his bio right now. Originally from northern New Jersey, musician Matt Sweeney started playing in bands in high school with his first group Skunk, who released 2 albums on Twin Tone Records. In the early 90s, he formed Chavez, which went on to release 2 incredible albums and an EP on Matador. When the band stopped playing together, Matt became a sideman, touring with GBV and Bonnie Prince Billy, until he formed Zwan with Smashing Pumpkins' Billy Corgan. Although Matt has continued to be a sideman and session musician, his most extensive musical collaboration in the 21st century has been with Will Oldham. Their album, Super Wolf, came out in 2005, and now their latest record, Super Wolves, will be released on Drag City next week. I can't say enough good things about Matt's music in all its forms. Chavez, man, Ride the Fader, when I first heard that back in college, just blew my mind. It's so good. But we have a really good talk about, mostly creativity. I do like to talk to people about their childhoods, but I remember Matt was on WTF like 6 years ago or so. I think he mostly talked about his family there. So I thought, why don't we lean into the other leg of the show, creativity, and we ended up talking a lot about the differences between making things when you're a teenager and when you're an adult, and a lot of other things. This is really great, and Matt's a smart dude, so I felt like we got into some interesting territory. By the way, if this is your first episode of Beginnings, thank you for checking out the show. If you'd like to check out other episodes, they're all there on Spotify. The last 100 are on every other podcatcher. I don't know why, but that's the way it is. I do not endorse Spotify over any other podcatcher. But what I like to do in this beginning is a little recommended if you like. If you like Matt, if you like Chavez, I've just been talking to a ton of great musicians in quarantine. Ian Mackay, Mary Timony, Sam Prekop, Thurston Moore, Francis Quinlan of Hopalong, and a ton of other people. Last week was Bob Nastanovich from Pavement. But, I've been doing this show for 11 years, so I have talked to hundreds of musicians and writers and authors and actors and comedians and artists and thinkers. So if you like what you hear and you want to check out more episodes of the show, you can subscribe on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, any big tech company that has a podcasting platform. and really wherever you get your podcast from. And of course, I am on Twitter and Instagram at Andy Beckerman. Oh man, amazing episodes coming up. Next week, speaking of Chavez, Clay Tarver, one of the other founders of Chavez with Matt, also a wonderful TV writer, filmmaker. Isabel Campbell from Belle and Sebastian coming up. John Allison, who's the comics creator behind Giant Days, who's I read all of them during quarantine, and it's a fantastic comic. And Terry Riley, who basically changed composition in the 20th century. He's coming up too, so stay tuned for that. Oh, one more thing before we get into the episode. I should note, I ended up using the Zoom audio for Matt's track for various reasons, and it gets a little glitchy about an hour in, but that only lasts for a couple minutes, so and you can understand what he's saying, but it was annoying for me to listen back to it, but it doesn't last very long, so I just want to let you know. So anyway, with that out of the way, let's talk to Matt. We didn't grow up like wealthy. We were like pretty solidly middle class, but like we still, as long as we had like food on the table and clothes, like we didn't really care about much else.
Yeah, I was lucky. I mean, like the idea of like not being an asshole was kind of like a thing growing up, and like the common good and just not being gross was, that, gangsters and pimp and baller and all that stuff was like, when I saw Scarface, I was like, this is a comedy and this is really insane, and funny, and Al Pacino's like kind of doing a terrible job, and this is really funny. Sort of a racist, funny, weird movie. And then it became, that's a hero,
Yeah.
So yeah, like, but I do hope that, I do like that that Biden has this kind of decency thing, that seems to be real. That actually checks out with everything that he's, that checks out with political reportage on him in the 80s, so it's like, it's fine.
Yeah.
We'll see, but
It is funny. I've been talking, more and more on the show. I've been talking to people who grew up like in the 80s or in the late 70s, and I've been really trying to chart where things started to change in culture. I'm curious.
It's Reagan, period.
Did you see, like, you were a teenager? You were a teenager like
yes.
the mid 80s, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's like just a fact. That's what happened. There was an idea of not being an asshole and being, taking from people and hoarding wealth and fucking people over was kind of gross. And the kind of the American ideal that a lot of these people like to refer to, whatever this 50s thing is sort of based on some idea of common good, and taxing people who have tons of money and all that stuff. And that all went away with Reagan, and that's it. So that was the giant shift, for sure.
I mean, did you see it around you? I know you were a teenager then.
Yeah, I remember, Rolling Stone establishing itself as a piece of shit rag when they had Michael J. Fox on they had Michael J. Fox on the cover in character as the Republican right-winger Alex P. Keaton, which was a character that he played on a TV show called Family Ties, I think was the show.
Yeah. And
it said like something to the effect of, "This is America's coolest teenager," or something along those lines. And I just remember being like, okay, fuck it. I was like, okay, so Rolling Stone is saying that this is cool. So that's that. And that's what this is. So shit like that was everywhere, but it really was, it was aggressive. It was just like, oh man, this sucks, and then any like sort of anything that wasn't aggressively espousing being that kind of asshole was, as far as like in culture was kind of airheaded and silly, like glam rock and stuff. And, black music was kept out of the mainstream really deliberately. And, like MTV wasn't playing, like it. So it was, I don't know. But then again, my natural mindset is sort of being depressed. And whenever I look back on just about any era, I'm like, God, that sucked. So it's like, Jesus, I'm not exactly sure when I like my first memories are of being like, oh, about stuff. So, you know, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just chemicals, but what can you do?
Yeah, but there's something maybe about the ages. I'm a little younger than you, so I was a teenager in the mid '90s, and
Mm,
there's something about like I think if you're saying like the Reagan era, really, if you could feel the change in the air, if you could feel
yeah.
the vibes, as everyone says today, change.
Mm,
Like I wonder if it's just that was like this demarcation where like pop culture did start to get terrible and it just never stopped getting terrible. So when you look back at every period, it's like, oh, this was not great and this was not great. And like all the cool stuff was always happening in the margins.
yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, yeah, and inherently cool stuff happens at the margins, and then often the really cool, sometimes the best of it gets really, really popular, and then everything gets fucked up.
Yeah.
Like it's that's just that's how it goes. I think, but they're just just the idea of fuck them all, fuck people who are poor. Well, it was fomenting it, but it was an '80s vibe. There is a like dorm room posters often say a lot about what the sort of LCD culture is, especially of the ascendant of people who are going to be coming into money and stuff. So like what's on the dorm room, this is going to be, this is the economics and stuff. And the poster was poverty sucks, that poster I think was first made in the late '70s, but like the poster that you'd see on a college dorm room wall, it said poverty sucks, and it was like a asshole looking guy with his nose in the air standing in front of a Rolls Royce. you know like that was like typical value shit. So yeah.
I mean, when you were growing up, like what were the values like in your family? Did you talk about ethics or morality at all?
Yeah, again, it was just like sort of don't be gross. I don't know, be not, don't be an asshole, be nice, don't be lazy, I don't know, it's like, yeah, they're just sort of what, my dad was born in 1930. He was a Jesuit, and he was a Chaucer professor. My mom was going to law school, but she was working for the U.S. Attorney's Office. They were both basically kind of public servant types, and they're teachers and doing stuff. And, they're as selfish as the next person, but there just was this sort of, you know, built in thing. Like it was great. Like what you're gonna, why would you be ostentatious, or why would you like conspicuous consumption's gross,
Hmm. Yeah.
it was just sort of, yeah, it wasn't that big a deal. But they're definitely like my parents had. I had no taste. I was just gross. I was a child. So, but you know what I mean? Like, but like they definitely had a certain kind of, sense of care and restraint. And, um, yeah, there really was a sense of like, I don't know, like my grandmother, I knew that my grandmother was very successful and powerful and had a house and had these amazing houses, and she was like a Ukrainian immigrant who had done really well. But she had a house in Florida. She had an amazing apartment on East End Avenue in Manhattan and stuff. But she only wore secondhand clothes and sewed her own clothes. You know what I mean? Like, and that was sort
Hmm.
of like, and that all sort of added up. It was like, right, because she lives in a really nice place, she's not going to act like a dick. Like that was just. But I was the one asking. I was like, how come we don't, how come grandma doesn't wear fancy makeup and wear, I know she has all this nice stuff. And it was like because grandma would look mean if she was wearing makeup and clothes. Yeah, I don't know. It was just like kind of, not to say that this was some sort of idyllic thing. It was just the way that it was. So yeah, and so for sure, the bummer is the 80s, and the bummer even when people talk about fucking virtue signaling, just come to think of it, it's like, oh, you want everybody to think that you do good. It's like, yeah, what the fuck is wrong with that? Like, I mean, it's like look at these idiots trying to. It's like, and of course, I do understand the idea of being naive, and I do understand the idea that people have had everything handed to them, are often judgmental, and don't understand how difficult things really are, and all that kind of stuff. I certainly get a lot of arguments about what's annoying about sort of well-meaning lefty, the well-meaning lefty approach that I just sort of have, but just on the whole, I mean, even like if you look at like at this, it's boring, but like Public Enemy was like very exciting and terrifying, and they were saying stuff, and then that kind of, even that sort of message stopped being commercially viable pretty quickly. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
all of a sudden Puff Daddy was ascended, or not all of a sudden, but what ultimately got a hold of stuff was like a Puff Daddy vibe, or a Kanye always talks about shitting on people. What do you want? It's like, and again, I'm a white dude, so but I don't know, just shitting on people is sort of gross.
Yeah.
In
In both its forms.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, yeah, there's, I mean, like, look, in this kind of like neoliberal period that I was formed in. This is why I'm so fascinated with this, because this is really where I was formed, and I think you were already kind of a person by the time this started to really infect culture. But like, this neoliberal period is like full of nihilism and full of this that kind of Ayn Randian individualism. We're not like Reagan and Thatcher. It's like, we're not a society. There's no such thing as a society. You're only individuals. And we're now like in 2020, like we're really reaping what was sown like 40, 50 years ago. And so,
yeah, I agree.
And like the way that it kind of just like co-ops everything, at like whatever kind of like political message, like Public Enemy, right? Or even like KRS-One or something, like whatever. It just co-ops everything into itself. It's this giant, I think of it like this giant blob. That just like, it's The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing. It just like infects everything and turns it into that kind of like body, that weird creature thing.
Yeah, but it's been weaponized with the internet to a degree that we can't fathom. But it's this, what we're talking about was fully formed. You could watch that movie with Andy Griffith, A Face in the Crowd.
Right.
Nothing's different. Like
right.
Nothing at all. Talking about the blob, talking about the idea of like a well-meaning thing being turned and being swallowed whole and being subverted into serving the purpose of making somebody who has too much money more money. You know what I mean? Like that's just the way it goes. But it's certainly, yeah. But as far as the me first messaging, it's definitely. I agree about that. It was like 40 years ago. It kind of, with the Reagan era, it took hold. And it's also funny how kind of like ding dongery, like the sort of thoughtless hedonism that led up to total selfishness. Like 70s, like disco and kind of partying and party culture and stuff, and sort of nihilistic party culture of the like 75 to 80. Just set up, there's not necessarily anything wrong with that in and of itself, but it set up a kind of situation that could allow this fuck 'em all attitude to just take total control.
Yeah. So do you just escape this because of your family? Like your family they kind of instilled some kind of like, don't be an asshole.
Well, we weren't in a position to make tons of money. Like I sure things probably could have changed. Although my mom did have a big income jump in my late teen years, but not enough to affect anything so much. But it does. Money really does corrupt. It's like if I got, for some reason, and this is how every story goes. It's like when people talk about their idealistic parents, and then the parents had to raise the kids, so they have to put the values aside, and then they get lucky and they make a fucking shit ton of money. And then your whole thing is protecting your money, because your money protects your kids, and you lose sight of being good in the thing of protecting your money. I mean, I don't know. That's just from seeing it, like firsthand. That's just kind of how it goes. And I don't have kids, you know what I mean? So it's like that's, so that makes me, that makes my opinion matter less in a way, because it's like, the people who have kids, money means something different to them. But it's just so easy to get, I guess I'm saying a bunch of different things, but once money becomes the bottom line, with what you're doing, it changes things.
Yeah. I mean, that's been something I've been really kind of, the more that that the things that I make, it's a career as opposed to like a hobby. And I don't know, I mean, you've been doing this since like the 90s. So I don't know how you felt about it. You've been doing this professionally, but like, I really am on the lookout, and I'm really like, I have my antenna up for any chance that I could become an asshole. Like,
well, that's good.
It's easy to be like, well, I guess I'll compromise for this thing. And then you just keep compromising until you are that person that you didn't want to become. And
I mean, it's good to check yourself, but it's funny, again, like with podcast, like it's very, like you said, you could just lose sight of it, like let's say, I don't know, like something like that podcast Song Exploder is like an embarrassing, unwatchable, unlistenable thing for me. But the weird thing about it is it's so clear that it has nothing to do with anything other than this guy had this idea. It could have been Burrito Exploder. You know what I mean? It doesn't, and people love this podcast, but like, to me, it's weird because it's like, this is about making this guy money. This podcast is about making the podcaster money because he had this idea. And like the douche chills that I got from listening, and I was like listening to, like, I was like, okay, there's loads of people I respect, who've been interviewed by this guy, so I'm gonna just bounce in and check. I was like, oh, woo! Like I couldn't make it past like 2 sentences, just because of how the thing is set up, and that's like, but again, it's presented as, we care about music a lot. This is about music, and we really care about how a song goes. So Matt Sweeney went down into the studio. That's like, no, you don't. You're trying to make your money, and all you care about is getting to the next person, getting to the next person, getting to the next person, having a big fucking long list of fucking cool names to allow you to get a Netflix special or whatever, And but I don't know. But again, I'm just saying how things can change, because I suppose at the core of it, a deep dive thing about how a song is made is maybe not a bad idea. I
like that. I like the idea of it. I find a lot of those kind of podcasts to be personalityless. Like the person behind them is.
But guess what? That show, Song Splitter, is about that guy. Weirdly, you know what I mean? It's like, isn't it his face and his thing? You know what I mean? And it's like, it's fine. All I'm saying is that it's and again, that show came really highly recommended from like incredible musicians and stuff. It's just one of these things where it's funny how you could just have different takes on it, but like the illusion of quality is something to really be aware of. Like like think of Sting and the illusion of quality. Think of things that actually have no value, but think of like Beck or I don't know, just like these things. It's like, dude, is this really good, or have you just think it's good, and it's an amalgam of like, Beck, he's got good taste, he sampled, I don't know, whatever Beck is. It's like, dude, have you actually listened to the music? Because there's all this stuff that's coming ahead of it. And that's what I mean by the illusion of quality, is like, this is claiming to be music that's informed and ha, and of a high quality. It's saying it's like advertising itself as such and presenting itself as such, but it's like, I don't know, is it? You know,
Well, okay.
you know.
Here's a weird question, because I think that
And also,
there's
and also, by the way, I don't know. I feel like I'm being so brutal, but like, it's just like, I don't know. Beck's, I'm taking really really easy examples, and these are only based on like, in the case of Beck, I remember years ago asking somebody, like a coworker, I was like, so when a new Beck record comes out, are you excited to listen to it because you're going to be hearing innovative music? He's like, absolutely. I was like, well, what? You haven't heard it yet, and it's already innovative. You know what I mean? It's like, but it's true. That's part of the thing. It's like, I know what I'm getting when I get Beck. It's like, the fuck is that? You know, and it's the same with like Song Exploder. The same with a lot of things that present themselves with the illusion of like, this is good. You know, and it's like, I don't know. I think that a lot of things are just sort of making somebody a bunch of money and eating up my fucking time.
well,
you know?
I think there is I think we're in a period, and I don't know if this is the, I've been trying to write a thing about like how after Barry Goldwater lost the election in 1964, that the Republicans, got organized and they started right-wing think tanks, and the right-wing think tanks could create propaganda that was not peer reviewed, right? If you're in academia and you write a paper, it has to be peer reviewed. If it's going to be in a journal, right? Your dad was a professor. But they figured out that you could do stuff on the side of it. And then if you had someone with a lot of money putting that into the cultural consciousness, then you could just create your own propaganda and use as much money as possible to get it out there and get people thinking that stuff. And that's why we live in an insane, that's one of the pieces of the puzzle about why we live in an insane society. And also why there, you know, I think other people and other parts of culture have learned from that. And that if you have a good publicist, you don't have to be good. You can create a myth. Right, exactly like you're saying. You can create a myth, and we live in a society that is mostly myth and delusion.
Yeah, and society is mostly myth and delusion. Yeah, or, I mean, often that again, that's really nothing new. And like, I was a publicist, I would do it all the time. I just like, or you know, you just see what happened. I mean, like for fun, Chavez, like when Matador forgot to keep Chavez's records in print, and we had been telling them for years that they weren't in print. They're like, no, they are. So when they realized they weren't, they felt bad about it, and they said, hey, what can we do to make it better? We're like, okay, put out a box set, and we're going to write a letter saying, and in the letter you're going to say that Chavez was Matador's biggest selling artist. You know, just so they do that. Yeah. And just because it was funny, you know, because obviously we weren't, because we were so insignificant as to not even matter that we were in print or not. They couldn't even tell.
Oh,
but
really?
Like, yes, but nonetheless, somehow in that thing, we're now known as one of the best-selling 90s artists. It's like, no, that was a joke that got somehow slipped into things. And now that's like part of the algorithm of Chavez sometimes, you know, it's like, that was a joke, you know, like, so, and I would see this all the time as a publicist, is you just see shit that's fucking wrong, and it gets flicked into the cycle, and then it just works, and it's happening constantly, you know. And I remember this was in the 90s. It would freak me out about music stuff. I'm like, Jesus, this is like one thing could just snowball into this thing. It's like, think about what's happening in every other aspect, you know. So, you know, there's, again, A Face in the Crowd is like a must-watch movie with Andy Griffiths and Elia Kazan directed it. It's like, just watch that, you know, and then, you know, and also like, I think, even though, I mean, you know, he certainly has his take, but Adam Curtis has a take on things that is, you know, but like pretty great to watch, no matter how you cut it, you know. And he gets to a lot of to things that we're talking about. Yeah, you know. That,
I mean, I bring him up on the show a lot.
Yeah, good. You know, like just because, you know, like, and you know, no one person is the catch-all, or you know, has it figured out, but he's somebody that's pretty pretty strong,
Yeah.
stuff, and certainly has played out. I mean, like his 2016 movies just was on the money,
Yeah.
like that
Hypernormalization.
yeah, hyper normalization. So
So
um,
okay, but what allowed? Here's the thing. I think there is a strong connection. I'm not sure exact. I don't know if you can put it in. If I can put it into words. If I can articulate
mhm.
it exactly. I think there is a strong connection though between ethics and aesthetics. And I think, look, this is just my opinion, but like,
Sure.
I love your music. I just the new song you put out that I just heard like yesterday. I think it was is amazing. I love Shavit.
Oh, cool.
Like every like you have been able to maintain over 30 years the ability to make interesting good music, right?
Thanks.
And I'm kind of curious like if you thought about any of like what's allowed you to kind of I don't know if it's well, I mean, what's allowed you to do this, if you've thought about any of these kind of connections that I'm talking about. I'll just it's a kind of
Sure.
open-ended
Yeah.
question, but
Yeah. I mean, not having kids has allowed me to do a lot of this. It's true. Having a really and that's as brutal as just having a low overhead
yeah.
and and not being beholden to having to take care of anybody other than myself. So that I think more than anything has factored into me being able to have a career where I could kind of do what I want, and um, so I mean that could be self-effacing, but it's really fucking true. And it's always I just feel like with music, it's really important just if you're ever wondering why somebody's doing something weird or lame, just find out whether they have kids or not, and then forgive them. Like, 'cause it's like it's like so it's easy for me to like kind of it's easy for me to say no to things and to sort of follow my dickhead muse because like I'm not hurting anybody. So that helped, and then also having a sense of who to play with and sort of having a being able to listen and being able to pay attention enough to know where I could be of use as a musician. You know what I mean? For me, again, also because I'm not like I can be a singer and a songwriter and stuff and be a front guy, but I don't have the my parents love me just enough that I don't need,
Ah,
you know, like
yeah.
I don't need that. I don't get off on the thing that so many people really need, whatever whatever they call it, like the feedback or whatever.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just been destroyed by social media's feedback loop that I get. It's like, yeah, well, I don't know. Yeah, that felt good. I don't really need to go any further than got a couple of
Mm-hmm.
likes.
Mm-hmm.
That's got it. I am kidding about that, but maybe not. But yeah, but I'm not kidding about the fact that like the drive to perform. When I perform, I want it to be fucking amazing. I want it to be really good and true to myself and all that kind of stuff. But it's like a shit ton of work, and it's like I'm just more relieved when I'm done. When I'm done doing playing in front of an audience or whatever, I'm not like, oh yes, this is my happy place at all. Whatever my happy place is making stuff and recording and working on stuff and like doing things. The process is really really fun, and working with people and fucking ping ponging things and stuff that's me, and so all of those things have allowed me to, just because I like doing things that way and because I'm of that personality type where I can totally work with other people, and I'm happy to help somebody else along if they have a vision or whatever, once I was able to figure out that because in my 20s I was like, God, I can't think of anything worse than having to play somebody else's music, like, which is I think what a lot of pretentious twats think. Excuse the term. I don't. That's bad, but I mean
No,
that
I
in
watch a
the.
lot of British TV.
I mean that in the English sort of taking yourself too seriously way when I say that word. But like, and then all of a sudden you kind of realize that you ain't shit, and that learning, and that it's all about sort of connection, and that it's not about self-expression. It's about everybody. It's about connection, and stuff like that. And I was like just lucky enough to probably playing with Chavez really helped a lot, just because the two other like creative members of the band were older than me and cooler than me, and so I was sort of able to. They were really helpful in the idea of like everybody's each other's boss in a weird way, and everybody totally respects each other in a weird way, and everybody and people, and you'd be like, wow, you're really good at that, like, and you can accept that somebody else says, oh, you're really good at that, and kind of that's what I like, and that's what I turned out to be good at. But it took a minute, like I was sort of in my maybe I was like 27 or something like that when I kind of had some kind of something turned in my head where I could play better with other people, and I was a little less. I could get out of the way of myself, I suppose would be the term.
Do you think that was just from playing in Chavez? Do you think did something happen in your life where
I don't
you
know.
were?
I think no. Well, because Chavez, it was. I mean, when I was talking about what I described was the case, but I think that it was just the case. Like that's what it was. I didn't have anything to do with. I didn't have much to do with providing this really ideal kind of democratic or whatever, or this ideal creative situation. I think that Clay and James had a lot to do with defining that. So I don't think I was appreciating it when we were doing it. That's just what it was. And in fact, I was sort of depressed and freaking out and not really able to enjoy it. Although I enjoyed playing with Clay and enjoyed playing with James, but I was really hard on myself. I thought that everything that I did was terrible and blah, blah, blah. And I really couldn't enjoy it too much. And then when they started, or when Clay had other things to do and Chavez started slowing down, I just got really fucking depressed and was like, oh, I don't know what to do. And I just didn't. This would be like 97 or 98. I wasn't sure what to do anymore. But then that coincided with the one cool thing was then I started playing with Will Oldham around that time. And that was a really great new way of thinking. Cause I was like, okay, cool. I ain't shit. And I've been getting into finger picking, and this guy's really incredible. And this is a zone where I don't really know much about. I just, I love a lot of the same stuff that this guy likes. I'm really impressed with his thing, and I want to learn how to finger pick. And all of a sudden I had this kind of really great situation where I could just kind of very low key go do that, and play with Will and stuff. And that was like, that was great. You know what I mean? But like, so I think, playing with Will in a weird way, it was like being sad that I couldn't play with Chavez anymore, to the point of almost being despondent, and then kind of enjoying the opportunity to not have to fucking think about Chavez at all, because it was plenty challenging. Just like I'd never played with a capo before, or like I just didn't even know, like there's like sort of being like, oh, there's so much other stuff out there, and I like folk music, and I like finger picking music, and I'm like, I was sort of expanding out of into newer stuff after, playing like a lot of really heavy, cool, dissonant, bandular music, and also listening to like a lot of noisy electronic music and stuff. Then it's just sort of landing in my late 20s in Will's zone was kind of a welcome thing. And I think that did really, that for sure, it opened up new paths in my brain about playing. And also, and Will is so, it's so good because he writes all these great songs, but also he loves covering songs. And the whole idea of just like serving a song, what can you do with the song, and getting out of the way of yourself in order to go somewhere interesting with a song, and just all that kind of stuff was huge, and still is to me. And it's still like an interesting zone, and like, sort of goals that I sort of had, or not even goals, just like things that I thought were impossible and awesome to do on guitar, I can sort of do now, or like being able to play certain songs and being able to play with people in certain ways and being able to improvise in ways that I thought I could never do, I could do now. But that's because I'm fucking 50. I'm fucking old as shit, and I've been doing this for fucking ever. So, but it's but still, like, you know, it's true that in my 20s stuff, I'm glad that I got interested in something that was challenging and rewarding enough to still be challenging and rewarding now, you know. Uh, and I've been thinking about this stuff because that, like you mentioned, that a new song, the new Superwolf song came out today. And so me and Will have been doing lots of sort of setup because we have a record coming out, and I've just been thinking about this run that I've had with him, which is like 20 years long, you know, and or longer, fucking 22 years I've been playing with Will, you know. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's those moments. I think, you know, it's those moments of rupture where you like
Mhm.
look in on yourself. I mean, you can obviously, like, anything can happen in moments of rupture, but like, you
Mhm.
know, as Chavez is ending, and you said you like kind of like we're in a funk a little bit. There,
Mhm.
that
Yeah,
gives you a little bit of space to kind of like, as you said,
totally.
get out of your own way. Because I think that's one of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
I think that's one of the most difficult things in creative life is getting out of your own way.
It's the name of the fucking game. A good friend of mine, we were talking, I don't know, when I heard that, we were talking about somebody, I don't know, sometime like 15 years ago, we were talking about somebody, and my friend, who's a Southern guy who has a funny way of talking, he's like, man, that guy just needs to get out of the way of himself, you know? And I was like, that's the fucking most, just like, yeah, there it is. It's like, because getting out of the way of yourself means that you're not destroying yourself. You're just recognizing that you do certain things,
Yes.
and that and that you have a set of things that aren't serving you. You're not trying to change them. You just go, oh, that's what it is, and it's like a column, and it could be even a column that holds up your identity or whatever. But it's still something that you can move around, you know, and it's it was a great criticism, you
Yeah.
know, and it's something to keep in mind, you know.
It's when you
And
relax. It's when you relax. You stop like putting again. If we're talking about like myth and delusion, all this kind of stuff, it's putting away
mm,
the myth that you created for yourself and
yeah,
being like, where it is.
sure.
It's like putting away that. If not as a person, as a creative person, this is what I'm good at, or this is what I can do, or this, whatever it is. It's like putting away that myth. Like, I'm gonna be whatever. I'm gonna be David
Yeah,
Bowie. I'm gonna be whatever
totally,
that is.
totally. Yeah, it's really important, or it's not important. It just happens. That's the thing. Is like you just don't know. But I mean, I agree with you. You don't know where you're going to end up, but almost you could almost guarantee that that it'll probably be the exact opposite of where of what your role that you thought you were going to be
Yeah.
is, and so I think the whole idea is like, you know, just don't be too freaked out. Or yeah, like another friend of mine who's like a really successful producer, still, it's like kind of can't believe that's how he made it. You know what I mean? He's like, because this guy like loves to perform, actually just loves it. Like being on stage, just being in front of anybody and doing the thing is what I don't love anything the way that this person loves that. Like, but where he fucking excels is totally behind the scenes. You know what I mean? And can do this really great, can do incredible support work. You
Yeah.
know, and it's like, and he's made like fucking bank doing like just wildly successful. You know, and like again, it's funny because when it was starting to happen, he's like, man, I just didn't think it was gonna be. You know, I don't know. He wasn't even psyched. You know, like which is and again, that's what's funny and cool about us as creatures. We cannot see ourselves. We just cannot see ourselves. That's just the deal. I mean, you know, you can't, you know, just but normally you have to, in order to see yourself, it's not, you have to go against instinct. You have to go against everything
Yeah.
that's comfortable and everything that's even rational in a weird way to be able to irrational by your own rules, you know. You have to learn how to see yourself and stuff. And with artists, there's a huge amount of myth making. You kind of have to make a myth out of yourself just to get enough balls to do anything.
Mm.
You know, you kind of have to fake it a bit. But again, you know, that is a perspective that kind of, it does, I think, have to do with, you know, just eating shit a bunch of times and being embarrassed a bunch of times and you know,
Yeah.
and then eventually getting it right. And what's funny about rock music or, all that stuff is that it's generally like the stuff is sort of maybe by people between the ages of 15 and 25, like as far as like where the spicy, exciting, fizzy window is and stuff. And it's like, they're all idiots. I mean, everybody from 15 to 25 is functionally an idiot,
Yeah.
And doesn't know what they're doing. And that's where all the good shit is. So, so usually by the time that you have a perspective and you've gotten out of the way of yourself, you're kind of done, or it's like, I don't know, you're 30, so you're definitely less sexy than you were, and you're less burning. But I'm talking about making really burning, insane rock music. That's
sure.
If we're talking about nuanced songwriting and other things, of course, the older you get, the better you get, without a doubt. But I'm just talking about this one kind of peculiar thing that is sort of what drives, I think, most media conversations about music. We are talking about stuff made by young people for young people, and we're talking about our memories of being young, and we're talking about, man, why the fuck she was just so fucking sick when I was 19. It's like, yeah, guess what? It was really sick when I was 19 too, and it was really sick when my dad was 19 too. Like there is like a certain amount of care juice and a certain amount of energy that just is a certain way at a certain age, and then and just kind of does go away. I guess I'm talking about two different things, but.
Well, you have natural energy. I mean, there is something also to the sense, like, it's not just delusion, or if not delusion or myth, I think it's just like at least in American society, like, I didn't know myself until I went into therapy, right? That's when I really started to, like, do, as you said, like, kind of like push all that stuff away, or like learn how to like look at myself. And I think that was the defining process of me like really starting to get out of my own way. And I don't think as a society, I grew up in Pennsylvania. You did not go to therapy unless something was really, really wrong, or you were ordered to go to therapy by the court or something like that. It was just not a normal thing. And then when I moved to New York, it's like, yeah, who's your analyst? Literally everyone was in therapy.
That's pretty funny.
So I don't think it's a normal thing, but also, I think you just have a certain amount of energy that you can put into your art at that time. So you don't know yourself very well, and you don't, or most people don't know themselves very well. And you're not, your craft isn't nuanced yet, but you have so much energy to put into it at that point. And I think I think that might be like one of those things that you're talking about.
Totally. Here's the thing is, it's like a Mark Gonzalez thing or something like that. And like, I like watching skateboarders. I don't know much about technical shit about skateboarding, but Mark Gonzalez figured out a lot of things that he basically was able to defy physics because he was a teenager and just didn't know that you couldn't do it. You know what I mean? And that is just across the board through, I think, like feats of artistry or athleticism or just say those two things. That's a really important thing that only a teenage brain can pull off, which is like, I'm trying to think of some other really, really good examples. But like, I know about a guy who believed that he was told that folk music was music that was carried on by an oral tradition. And he read this when he was like 15, and this was like in the 50s. And he was like, oh, cool. What he understood that to mean was, if I hear a folk song, I will know that song. It's like this magical kind of music that that it could have 5 verses, and I'll hear it once. And because it's oral tradition, that means that it gets zapped into my brain. And he believed that. And the guy was able to memorize thousands of songs. You know what I mean? And for like 5 years was just a fucking machine, and kind of had a whole career based on his songwriting. And he said there was like a good 2 years he like moved to New York and did the whole folky thing. And somebody finally, he just thought that was the case with folk music. He just thought that like you hear it and you could fucking do it. And then once he figured out that obviously that was just something, that there was some bizarre fucking thing that he thought, you know, he couldn't do it anymore. You know,
Yeah.
of
Oh,
course, it
weird.
goes
Oh,
away. Yeah. But that's just the case. So many people, you know, like, you know, that's the kind of prodigious. Well, children can be prodigious in that way too. If you're a child, you just don't know. You're like, you hear a piano thing, you go, oh, I want to play that, and you fucking play it. Some people have that kind of brain, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of that stuff does happen. That's just like why rock music and stuff can be kind of amazing, is and why it's just certain feats of teenage shit, teenage endeavor can just be astonishing and really wild. It's just nobody told you that. Nobody said it wasn't possible. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Nobody said it was not possible. And you know that there's a lot of truth to that. And I think that a lot of stuff that we value has something to do with this, with the superhuman feats of ignorance. You
Yeah,
know,
I mean, was that what it was like for you? Because I mean, you mentioned before. I don't know
totally.
if there was like you said you had depression or you have depression, and like I
Yeah.
think
I mean,
about how that like saps your energy. Like, how did you?
oh, I don't know, but I mean, I don't know. For example, yeah. Here's another example. Like, so I, you know, was like, I wanted to play. All I cared about was music. Wanted to play music. Told people I play guitar, even though I didn't. And then, you know, I turned. I guess it was for my 12th birthday. I don't know. I guess. All of a sudden, my parents or my dad got me a bass guitar. You know, and instead of being like, oh fuck, you know, I want to do guitar, it's like, oh cool, it's a red PV bass guitar. It's a fucking bass guitar. That's amazing. And somehow the first band that I played in, we were like a Rush cover band, and like, and the Zeppelin. Like my friends showed me the set list. These are songs that are challenging to play for me now, and we somehow did it. I don't. I'd love to hear what it sounded like, but like that's that's the first stuff I played, was like this extremely, you know, like I was just came out flying on bass, flying. And weirdly, the only thing that I take that I could say I fucking kick ass at is rock, like crappy rock bass. I'm fucking, it's insane. Like I can just do it really well. It's like I'm fearless about it. Like it's like I can just really rip ass on fucking like tasteless, crappy Rush style rock, you know, like just like kind of just bass dog type, like, you know, cover dude in the cover band. It's like, that guy's actually pretty good on bass. He has no taste, but he sounds pretty good. Like I could just do that so well, and that's just something that I learned all of these fundamentals with in 1 week when I was 12. I could just fucking go. I don't know why. I mean, I do know why. I wanted to do it, you know, and
What
and and
what was it about?
and
Like you were saying that you like you said like you were telling people you could play music before you could. Like what was it about it that like when you were like 10 or 9 or whatever that like struck you?
about music.
Yeah.
Um, just that oh, I mean, it's all I gave a shit about. That, you know, like it's I mean, I was into it from just from whenever I could remember. So I don't know what struck me, but you know, like what didn't strike me about it. Everything about it seemed like you'd be crazy not to do this thing. That's also why I think I'm a pretty boring person, and I'm not particularly impressed with anything that I've done musically. It's like, well, fuck, it's not like I did anything else. It's like, it's not like I gave, you know what I mean? It's not like I learned another language, or like, you know, learned how to build a house or built a car or did it, you know. It's like all I really cared about intensely was music. So I should be fucking okay at it at this point. You know, I should have, like, you know, God damn it, by the time I was 20, if I've been thinking about this shit every day since I was 4 years old, then fucking I better be okay. You know,
Maybe.
like
I mean, that
it's
doesn't
fine.
mean that you're like a creative person, right? It means you could be technically proficient.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But again, that the technical proficiency is what I'm talking about. That came really fucking easy. That was like instinct. Like, for some reason, the technique part was like almost instinctive. It's so weird, you know, and that has to do with the fact of what kind of music I wanted to play, which was like progressive, crappy, you know, like just obvious, fun to play, fun to like. With Rush, if you're 12 years old, you're like, oh, that's difficult to play, and it sounds difficult to play, and it's flashy. It's like, okay, I want to fucking do that. It's just as simple as that, you know, and like I couldn't imagine why anybody would want to do anything other than that. Like, what, play a simple song? I thought that was some sort of like adult conspiracy to keep things boring. You know what I mean? Like when people were talking about simplicity and less is more, it's like, shut up. You know, more is more. You know, like just all
Yeah.
that kind of all that kind of stuff. It's like that's just a thing. I don't know. And also, you know, my dad was a musician, so it was like a musical household, and my mom can sing her ass off. She just can. She could she was like the in charge of her choir, so she could just spot harmonize, you know. And so I was just around music, and I thought music was cool. I thought my parents looked cool whenever they were doing music, and they didn't do it professionally. It was, which also I think kind of affected things too for me, which is that it's something that was that you could do it, you know, that was like something that everybody could do. The people who did it professionally, like the Monkees, you know, they're special and they're the best, you know what I mean? And probably what they're doing is a much better version of music, but it's all music and you could do it, you know, like that was understood to me, you know, to be the case. And also there was still music education in school. So it's just like, it
Yeah.
wasn't, you know, the people that were amazing to me, you know, it had to do with how they look. Musicians, it had to do with how they looked, and you know, they had to be untouchable. But the idea of being able to do stuff was, you know, I saw it. I saw people singing and playing in real life, you know, a lot. So
I
that
mean,
that
is it
you know,
something also your brain, like, is your brain keyed into complexity? Or is it that, like, because I think about like Rush, I think about the fact that like I never was really into prog as a kid, but like
mhm.
I was keyed into complex music. I liked pop songs that did different things, that like maybe were
Like
linear pop songs that
what
like
kind of song? What's an example of a song that you like?
I think of some of the early, like the psychedelic stuff that the Beatles did. I think about like it's not like
Okay,
verse
gotcha.
chorus verse. It's like we're
Right, I
gonna
hear
go
you.
from one part to another part to another part to another part. Right?
That was also that was the first shit that, like, the Beatles was the first band that I did the obsessive thing when I was 8. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
like for Sergeant Peppery, this goes to that and that and that and that, and that's impressive. And yeah, which
yeah,
is, and also different than Prague. I totally hear what you're saying. Like somehow when I heard Rush, it was like the Beatles, whatever they were doing wasn't this amazing thing that Rush was doing. Like basically music with flashy music with no subtlety. You know what I mean? Whatsoever. It was like became very important, you know, and that's a good way to learn music in some ways. You'll just learn a lot, you know.
yeah.
Again, this is just talking about that the untrained brain, you know, where it's just where it's just desire. But and I guess maybe in my case, because I was raised by people who actually did know how to play music, I wasn't totally like I knew it had to, you know, like I'm always jealous of delusional people who just suck at music and they're fucking and they think it's great. I'm like, God, that must be so awesome. Like I wish that you know, when you see somebody who's just terrible and they think they're good, that's so
Yeah.
great. You know, I mean, that must be a
Uh,
great feeling. I don't have that feeling. Yeah, it's impossible for me to do that. Like, I know if it sounds bad or if it doesn't, you know. So
yeah. Self knowledge is a little bit of a curse in that sense. That like where you're like,
mm,
well, I know this. Like, because when you were saying earlier, I'm like, well, I want it to be Bob and David. I want it to be Mr. Show. And then at some
mm,
point, you know, I'm doing comedy in New York, and I'm like,
mm,
I'm a pretty good performer, but
mm,
like I'm a great writer, and I
right.
know that's just what I'm like. I'll always be
Mm,
I'll always be a pretty, like, my wife's a stand up and she's amazing, and I'm like,
mm,
oh, I'll never, as much as I wanted to be or something like that. I have an example in my life of someone who's like achieving at the highest levels of this stuff, and I'm
mm,
like,
mm, mm,
oh, okay, I know my limits, and I know like
mm.
that self knowledge is like can also be kind of like
No, it's true. Well, it could, yeah. It's a, it all, yeah. But I mean, it's like it sounds like you had the maturity and and also the fortune of knowing what really, of being able to love yourself enough to accept that you're good at one thing, and also to have examples of somebody who's great at a thing that you're not great at. I don't, you know, it's funny. A big thing growing up was like I had a friend. I have a very vivid memory of being like 11 and being like, wow, this my friend can draw. Like I'm technically better at drawing than my friend, but his imagination just fucking blows mine out of the water when he has a pen in his hand and when he's drawing. And it was a kind of I was like, I'm gonna fuck this dude on music because this guy played music too. I was like, I'm gonna fucking like, and it's funny because I'm not that competitive, but I really I know that this happened where I was like, he's better at me than at drawing, which is really what I wanted to do, but he just is smoking me so hard. And I have this aptitude towards music that this guy doesn't have. I could see that, you know, it was just obvious that I could copy shit better. I could just play it right away. You know what I mean? And this guy struggled with it. But then but in order to make up something that was truly fucking funny and fucking off the wall, this guy could just, I was nothing compared to this guy, you know? And
yeah, I wonder, I mean, tell me
that was a thing.
Yeah. Tell me if this makes any sense, if this feels right. Was it also like growing up? I mean, was it an intellectual household? I'm assuming it was. And I wonder if that kind of like keys you into some kind of complexity early on, or like allows your brain to like kind of like go in that direction.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah, it had to. Yeah, dude, my dad played bagpipes. That like those melodies are complex, you know, it's true, you know, and like for some, like my dad was listening to a lot of Irish folk music when I was growing up and like reels and stuff like that. And then I was also forced to see just so much boring, like John Philip Sousa music and stuff. But like, I remember just at a very young age, you know, like just knowing, I'd been hit with a lot of music, you know, and a lot of long, you know, like long lines and long, just melodies that were complicated. So I did have a sense of, I definitely had a sense of the complex for sure, you know, from a pretty early age, and a sense of a sense that there was a lot that went into this stuff, you know what I mean? It's also like just from going, I think what really drove what maybe I loved about rock music was that I was forced to see all these orchestras as a kid, and I would just trip out on how many fucking people were there, and I would just, you know, there's just so much to take in. It would blow my mind, you know. As a kid, I was just like, you know, like, how is this possible? You know, like, it's just too much for a kid to, if you're not a dummy and you're a kid, it's too much to take in. And I was really, so I loved rock bands. There's like, or even just bagpipes or just one thing, or things that smaller groups were really attractive to me because the bigger groups freaked me the fuck out. Like, you know, I had so much time to contemplate and not understand how it was possible to do. Like, I watched so many conductors, you know, being like, what the fuck are they doing? What is that guy thinking? Is that guy thinking that, you know, and really they're all reading the same thing. I don't know, somehow that did not fascinate me. It kind of bored me and frustrated and scared me. And watching all these orchestras and stuff, and I really got drawn toward the idea of a small, powerful group of, you know, idiots like Kiss. True. Yeah.
But that's doing complex dynamic. You're making complex dynamic music. And I wonder, like, when you were talking about like being like going to the orchestra and being like kind of in the face of this massive complex thing that's making this one piece of music, it really made me think of like, do you know that the concept, I think I remember it, it may just be a general kind of like 1600s philosophical concept, but I read it in Kant, the idea of the sublime. I forget which he like has a bunch of different names for it, but like the sublime, when you go into nature and you're greeted by like the ocean, it's so large, your brain can't grasp this thing. Right. And so this feeling of like the sublime kind of like rushes over you, this kind of like,
right.
In the presence of this giant natural thing. And I think of like the orchestra, or I think of like complex music in the same way. Like when I listen to like a minimalist piece, when I listen to like Steve Reich or someone like that, it's that same kind of feeling of like pleasure that washes over me because I'm in the presence of this thing my brain can't grasp. That's complex, but also like one kind of thing.
You have to let go.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And it's funny too, because lately, like, I run on the East River after years now, but I as I get older, just staring at a big unfathomable thing of water is like that's my shit. You know, and as a kid, I really didn't like it. Like as a kid, I was like, what are you doing staring at the ocean? That shit's fucked up. You know, like there's too much. You know, and now definitely I think about the yeah, I guess the idea of the sublime or something that's too much to handle, but still is this unified thing. And like, what is it? What am I looking at? You know what I mean? But and then but still as far as minimal stuff, that's why like ultimately like finger picking stuff and you know like really appealed to me. I never even thought I'd ever play it. It was just like, you know, by the time that I heard Charlie Patton or, you know, just any kind of like, or John Fahey or, you know, and orchestral, but minimal, but it's all happening on this one instrument and it's really powerful, but it's also like not really wowing you with technique. It's just something else, you know, the technique is inherent in the thing, but it's only an emotional result, you know, that feeling. I was fascinated by that, but just as a listener, that appealed to me the most. And that still is I think some idea of the sublime, but it's like, it's all just coming out of this one, you know, thing, you know, like it's coming out of like this, you know, like, you know, like it's like that still kind of amazes me. And I'm so glad that I have the capacity to be awed, you know, by a minimal amount of interplay. I could still completely have a sense of the infinite, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
would you, were your parents open to that when you were growing up? Were your parents open to that? Like, were you brought up in a household that could emotionally identify this stuff?
This is an interesting question. Yeah, in the sense that like to adore music or a movie or even food and just think it was the most amazing thing ever, that was encouraged, you know, like that was totally understood. And to fan out and just be, oh God, that's amazing for sure, you know, like my, you know, my mom loved movies, my dad, you know, he was a professor, but all he did was chase music. All he was doing is, you know, it was just music all the time. So like yeah, you know, for sure there was a constant sort of there was always appreciation was encouraged, I suppose.
Was it a generally like emotionally intelligent household, or do you think like it was only when it came to media there was an emotional intelligence?
I don't know. It's interesting because at the same time, like my parents didn't like rock music. You know, they were not hippies. You know, there actually were a lot of rules and stuff. But there was definitely, I guess, so the term emotional intelligence didn't exist then, but it does describe a certain sophistication and understanding of art and music and stuff, and paying attention to it to a certain degree. Like my mom made me watch Don't Look Now when I was a kid. It's pretty fucked up movies.
Yeah.
You know, but like, I'm trying to think of some. So there's some like radical things, but then there's some very, you know, just typical, like, I would say very conservative, but there was definitely boundaries, you know. I'm trying to give an example of what the boundaries would be, but you know, my parents you know, my dad was pretty disappointed that I liked Kiss. He didn't say anything, but he would just be like, why does the guy talk like he's like, you know, this guy really I was listening to some live Kiss record and Paul Stanley's going, you know, how's everybody feel? Oh yay, and all this shit. My dad like came in and he goes, you know, it sounds like it sounds like he's doing a minstrel act. I remember my dad said about Paul Stanley. He goes, I don't know if you've ever seen minstrel stuff, but this sort of sounds offensive, you know, like, and then he walks out of the room and I was like, I was like, I don't know, it sounds cool to me, you know, but like, so, and then my uncle, who's a scientist, I remember when Meets the Phantom of the Park was on, which is like this horrible show that is famous for being like the worst thing ever. And of course I was watching it pretending that I loved it because it was Kiss, and my uncle just walked in and he goes, he goes, this is for airheads. Like, this is for stupid people, and you're not a stupid person, so I just don't. What do you see in this? And I was like, oh, I don't know. It's like, or watching, or when the Sex Pistols, New York media loved the Sex Pistols. So when that was happening, it was like 1970, whatever, 77 or 78. There was a news story. I happened to be watching the news with my dad, and this story about the Sex Pistols comes on, and we both watch it, and my dad goes, "Would you ever like any music like that?" And I was like, "Fuck no," or like I was like, "No, definitely not. Why would I ever like that stuff?" You know what I mean? So just meaning that my parents were thoughtful and aware of things, and they weren't telling me, and they were interested, and they liked that I was into stuff. They just didn't really think it was that great.
Yeah.
you know
Was it tough to break from that? Was it like to go to try to do music professionally, right? It seems like you would have to like break with them, at least philosophically or emotionally in some way.
My parents were still the 70s laissez-faire thing where, like it could be argued that maybe their lives everybody could have been better without them having kids. Everybody just had fucking kids in the 60s and 70s. And then the rule of that time was like, yeah, you have kids and you could leave them the fuck alone. Like, I was a latchkey kid, like nobody was around, So, sorry, what was the question though? It was about.
It seems like to try to do music professionally, right? It seems you would have to break with them.
Okay. So meaning I didn't really have to break. They were just relieved. So I was last week. They're just glad that I wasn't fucking hitting them up for money and that I wasn't on drugs, or drugs if they could notice. Like that. So not so much, but I really would say that had more to do with them just looking after themselves and being like, oh, you got into college, that's good. Like they were just relieved that I wasn't fucking up and lighting the house on fire or lighting my house on fire or whatever. So there wasn't too much of a argument from their point of view about what a terrible idea it is to pursue music. They just were kind of relieved that I wasn't bothering them too much, and because I really liked it, and also like I was able to make records, from an early age,
Right.
So I was already kind of doing it, in high school. I was already kind of doing it. I was playing shows, and like we made a 7-inch, and in college my band got signed or whatever, so it was like there wasn't too much of an argument from their point of view because I was already engaged at a pretty young age with this thing. And then by the time that my life was ruined, it was sort of too late. I remember, I remember my mom being like, have you ever thought about going back to college? I was like, well, I tried to. It was a long story, but at one point I was planning on transferring to Columbia in New York City just so I could do my band and go to school, and also because I was trying to stay in school and stay interested, but I was losing interest rapidly, and Columbia seemed like it could work. And when there was some kind of like fee to like, I needed like $1,000 to apply or something like that. And so I hit up my mom for that. I thought she'd be impressed that for the first time ever, I was actually like proactively pursuing something academic, in that I was trying to transfer because I'd only gotten into one school. And so I was at Northwestern and I was trying to get into Columbia. My mom was like, whatever mood she was in, she's like, no, you're like, I don't really think it's a good idea for you to go to school in New York. I don't know what she was thinking, but a couple of years after that, she's like, hey, have you ever thought about going back to school? And I was like, Mom, I tried to go to Columbia. And she's like, oh, fuck, that's right. She's like, why the hell did I say? What did I say? I was like, you said you wouldn't for the thing that. She's like, God. She's like, all right, well, I'm never gonna give you a hard time any of that shit again. Like, so, like, that was. They were just. Again, I'm fortunate. They were fine, and I wasn't too much of a tax on them, and I was able to get a stupid job and not bother them for anything, in the way that privileged white people are often able to do. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I was able to just get out of their hair and kind of pursue my stupid thing. Like that's just lucky. If I really do wonder what I would say Well, I don't know. It's just actually I always actively dissuade people to do music. Just
Really?
don't do it. Kind of just well, I like how like at Superiority Burger, a lot of the people who work there because I'm involved in a restaurant and so all these like great people work there. A lot of them are in bands and stuff. And Brooks Headley, who was in Born Against and all these bands, is the Superiority Burger guy. And me and Brooks are friends, and so we are all we ever do is talk about music. But we're always like dissuading the people who work there who are thinking about doing bands because it's a lot of punk rock people. We're like just don't do bands, just don't. So me and Brooks can go on these really fun negative diatribes about how it's just like how just great it is not to be in a band, like and how many fucked up problems we had because of our pursuit of being in bands. Of course, I wouldn't trade it for the world, but
Do you think it's
good.
just the going back to the beginning a bit? Do you think it's just the kind of the monetary stuff that fucks that up, or do you just mean the like
I mean,
interpersonal?
yeah, probably interpersonal stuff. Yeah, I mean, I've never money's not. Again, this is because I don't have kids, so I can be like, money's not that big a deal. But it's because I never had pressing financial obligations beyond taking care of myself. Uh, I was able to kind of be a ding dong and have fun doing music, but like, it's just like I'm really like not that interesting or impressed with what I've done in that regard, because it's like I don't know what's like I've been able to have a career in music by like not making a ton of money and doing what I want.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah, no,
like wow,
that's
big deal.
important.
Like yeah, I mean, it's cool, and it's like, and I guess it's difficult to do, and I'm super fucking grateful, but I also think that I'm really really fucking lucky, super lucky, and for sure my background of having really sweet tolerant parents fucking has everything to do with it. You know what I mean? Like so it's like it's like it's a weird thing, and I've always been aware of it. Uh, kind of painfully aware of of the privilege vibe. I'd say, I think I've never been deluded about that. It's like if you play guitar, that means that you had a room in your house. That means you
Hmm.
grew up in a house. That means you grew up in a fucking house with a fucking garage. I don't have a fucking house with a garage. You know what I mean? Like so it's like there's just all these things that of my era that like if you're playing a rock band that implies a pretty huge amount of privilege. It just does. Like it's like I mean at the very least it meant that you had space and time, which is
Yeah,
privilege.
yeah,
you know
and that
so
window has even shifted further and further. Like it was one
totally.
like you know uh now, I think a lot of bands like you have to be pretty wealthy to really start a band.
Yeah, man, it's fucking hard. Yeah, I mean but I think you had to be pretty wealthy back then too. You kind of did. I mean, the wealth was distributed a little bit differently. You know what I mean? Like, and if we go back to, if we're looking at 50s, 60s stuff, that was it's basically kind of a socialist garage situation that everybody was in. Like everybody kind of had the same shit. And the gear was cheaper and the rent was cheaper and the houses were smaller. And but like, it's still it can't be. You can't deny the fact that like it's privilege drives band music, like rock band music. It
Yeah,
does,
yeah,
and like and even like like Matter Records, the amazing roster. I remember like I remember just being very aware of this. You having gone to a fancy school, I was like, Jesus Christ, all indie rock, almost all of it is like made by people who have gone to amazing schools. It's like Northwestern, Steve Albini and Urge Overkill. It's Northwestern, you know, uh, Liz Fair, Come, Bitch Magnet, that's Oberlin, all these, it was crazy, like it was all in this one chunk of like a 5-year period. It's like just America's finest schools pumping out all these cool bands, but it's, like Harvard has Galaxy 500 and Volta, I
yeah.
remember actually sort of being impressed by Nirvana. I was like, whoa, these dudes are actually like real, just normal like those are actually remember some in my early 20s. I was like, I'm really getting more interested in these bands that aren't college that never went to college, but it's hard to find those bands. It's really rare, like in general, it's like, it's like, it's not very sexy to say, but these are facts, it's like shit, and then now we speed up to like whenever Vampire Weekend happened, whatever that happened sometime in the last 20 years, but that was like the ultimate example of like, yo, we're fucking rich. We are stealing from Africans and it's awesome, and you like us because we are fucking rich and we have the dopest clothes and we have an understanding of marketing that could only come with extreme privilege and we are copping to it. And everyone's like, yes.
That was the mid aughts.
It was
the
amazing.
Mid aughts.
It was fucking shifted. Amazing. It was so wild, and it was just like, wow, and for me, the mid aughts, I'm like, at that point, I'm 35 and just truly just trying to survive, like that's it. And I was sort of like, I had already had so many weird things happen to me at that point and I was older than all those bands by 10 years, so that's what it was really great to be able to do Superwolf and do stuff with Will and just kind of go and do Current 93 and actually just and do fucking interesting shit and kind of be able to do it how just out of luck. And then that's when I was working a lot with Rick Rubin and making records and stuff. I really got so fucking lucky at a pretty dark time because it was it was things like Vampire Weekends and then the Strokes is like the understanding is like, yes, I mean, it was very aggressively wealthy people making aggressively co-opted music, that was like brilliantly well done, couldn't beat this shit. You couldn't beat it. You know what I mean? And to an adoring audience, it was like, yes, this is what we want. We want really privileged white people playing very cool music, styled people. At this point, the internet had people had curated their taste in this in echo chambers, and had such deep knowledge, deep shallow knowledge, or how you want to put it. If it's like a plane that's a very wide, however you want to cut it, that kind of internet understanding of having all of privilege and access to slivers of things, you know what I mean? To the shiniest, coolest slivers of things and stuff. What that's what that seemed to be what was going on in the mid aughts, and like, I don't know where that stuff is now, but it still seems to be, it's I guess they're trusted brands. It's like, but it's so wild, and it's like, and I love African music, and I work with African bands, and it's like, it kind of, I don't know, it's like, geez, that Songway Blues record, I mean, I produced this record, but it's like, that's a really fucking cool record. Hope somebody likes it. I wonder what it would be like if they were white dudes who were making it. Maybe it would be more popular. I don't know.
I remember writing a review where I kind of called out Animal Collective for using a lot of Native American imagery and a lot of stuff like that. And I got torn apart. This was like maybe 2007 or 8. I got torn apart for even just, I'm like, hey, let's just be, I wasn't even like saying like, this is bad. I'm just like, hey, we should all be aware. This is what it is. Let's be aware of like what's happening. And I wasn't vindicated until like a couple months ago when they're like, hey, we did this. This is what we did. And it wasn't good that we, appropriated all this imagery and stuff. And but yes, at the time, 12 years ago, I was ripped apart for even mentioning it.
I know it's an interesting thing. And like on this, I'm curious as to what perception is going to be. Like on this record, we have the Mdu Mokhtar band for a few songs and stuff, and we like went all in on sort of trying to, I mean, it is my belief, just again, because I've been doing it long enough, like I get turned on to the idea, I get excited about how much music sounds the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's something that I kind of, when you start to get into shit and start threading music and stuff and getting deeper, you start to see that there's all these connections and stuff like that. And so like on this record, it was just funny. It was interesting. Like, oh, wow. Okay. So we're white Anglo guys making records, making music with Africans, like who, what's the give and take, and what does that mean? And being fortunate enough to, again, like I said, to play the Songhoy Blues, or to work with Tenorwin, or work with MD Mokhtar, it does make me, I don't know, think about stuff, authenticity and stuff. But then again, it's funny, like, like I certainly have, like, I rip off everything that I can with anything that I like. I just rip it off. But like, and I've been listening to Tuareg guitar players now since I was for like 20 years, and so now I can sort of fake that a little more. And there's a guitar solo on this new song that just came out today. And it's funny, a lot of people are like, oh wow, did you get MD Mokhtar to do that guitar solo? I was like, no, this is just me. I got better at doing what I was doing in Chavez. You know what I mean? Like it's the same. It sounds so much like, it just sounds like a Chavez-y kind of thing, but because, and when I heard African music, I was like, fuck, that's what I was trying to do with, I'm just trying to make music, like I'm just trying to get a feeling and stuff like that. And I don't know.
Complexity. I think the underlying thing that's gone on, like in the same way that I listen to a lot of like polyrhythmic African music, right? It's the same kind of complexity that is underlying all the stuff that your brain keys into, that my brain also keys into, that I think transcends nationality or transcends ethnicity.
I think that's true. And then it's also like, and it's fun also that as you get older, like now, of course, when you hear, when I first was able to hear what was going on, again, something like Charlie Patton really opens it up. But when you listen to old timey music that isn't 12 bar and like music that you don't know where it's going to go next, and you start to see the fucking mind blowing complexity that's going on inside of it, or even I really don't see any difference. I'm not trying to be funny, but like, like I remember I loved AC/DC, and then I get into Rush, and when I'm a kid, I'm like, I can't listen to AC/DC. That music's stupid. You know what I mean? Like they're singing about pussy, and it's only the same 3 chords. That's stupid. And then, by the time I was 18 or 19, I was like, and brain had grown. All of a sudden, realizing that AC/DC is like the music of the gods, and that it's like there's a divine there's this incredible divine architecture to it. That's like, it's so incredible, and it's mind blowing, and so it's like, it's cool, but I don't disagree with you that sort of that as you made a point that complexity is in music is something that if I'm not drawn to, it's sort of there's a beauty in it, and even if something is raw and not trying to be complex, it's super complex. Or like a guy I was thinking about is this guy Charles Caldwell. I can't recommend this record enough. The guy's name is Charles Caldwell. The record's called, I think, Remember Me. But if you want to hear some just very minimal music that just like starts to fucking blow your mind very quickly, it's just mostly vocal and guitar and drums. It's blues, and he died before the record came out. But it's some of the fucking coolest music ever, and that's a pretty quick like zap into stuff that is simultaneously very raw, but it's super complex, and these things that are building, and it's like gorgeous. And this guy's intention was simply to get some pussy and get drunk and or whatever it is, but what he's doing is phenomenally, is the music of the spheres, you know what I mean? And I like that. It's like he's singing about dog. This guy was a professional dog fighter. This guy was not even a good guy. What? But I don't know. That's a record that I go back to again and again. I just trip out on it. It's also really cool recording. If you ever want to hear just how deep one guitar can sound. But yeah.
Matt, thank you so much for talking with me today.
Yeah, man.
This was just
pleasure, man. Thanks.
Absolute delight.
Totally, man.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, 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 bye.